The observation deck of the Kalvari warship hummed with the usual sounds of triumph. Screens flickered with tactical data, consoles beeped their confirmations, and somewhere in the background, the victory chant had already begun. Commander Threx stood at the center of it all, his 4 arms crossed in what his species considered the ultimate display of dominance. I watched him from my station, mandibles clicking softly in what humans might call amusement. My name is Vokhtar, Senior Intelligence Officer, and I had seen this particular brand of arrogance before. It never ended well. "Look at them!" Threx bellowed, gesturing toward the viewport where a small human vessel drifted in the void. "The mighty Terrans, reduced to begging for mercy. Their weapon systems are offline, their shields are down. And their boarding party?" He laughed, the sound echoing through 3 of his throat sacs. "A single female. 1! They send us 1 warrior, and she carries nothing." The crew erupted in laughter. Even I had to admit, it looked bad for the humans. The transport shuttle had docked 5 minutes ago, and our sensors confirmed what Threx said. 1 life sign. No energy weapons, no plasma rifles, no particle cannons, nothing that registered on any of our detection grids. Perhaps, I ventured carefully, we should exercise caution. Human tactics are often unconventional. Threx spun toward me, his eye stalks quivering with what I recognized as poorly contained rage mixed with excitement. "Caution? Caution! Vokhtar, you have been in intelligence too long. You see shadows where there is only light. This is not tactics. This is surrender. They know they cannot win, so they send us a diplomat. A scared little diplomat, with empty hands and empty threats." The docking bay alert chimed. She had cleared the airlock. "Bring up the visual feed," Threx commanded, leaning forward like a child about to witness something delightful. "I want to see the fear in her eyes when she realizes her mistake." The main screen flickered to life, showing the interior of Docking Bay 7. And there she was. Human females were, by Kalvari standards, absurdly small. This one stood perhaps 1.7 meters tall, which meant she would barely reach Threx's mid-torso. She had dark skin that caught the harsh bay lighting, hair pulled back in what humans called a ponytail, and she wore a simple gray jumpsuit with no armor plating whatsoever. Her hands, as Threx had so eloquently noted, were completely empty. She walked with a strange rolling gait that I had seen before in human military personnel. Confident, relaxed, almost casual. She stopped in the center of the bay, looked directly at the camera, and smiled. "Greetings," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the intercom. "My name is Lieutenant Kira Stone, Terran Defense Force. I understand you wanted to discuss terms?" Threx nearly fell out of his command chair laughing. "Terms? Oh, this is precious. This is absolutely precious. Baruch!" He snapped his fingers. "Well, the Kalvari equivalent. Take a security team down there. Bring our little diplomat to the interrogation room. Let us hear what terms a weaponless human thinks she can negotiate." Baruch, the security chief, was not as amused as his commander. He was old, scarred, and had fought in 17 campaigns before taking this posting. "Sir, recommend full tactical response. Humans are dangerous even when unarmed. You recommend we treat this mouse as a threat?" Threx gestured dismissively. "Fine. Take 6 guards. Surely 6 armed Kalvari warriors can handle 1 tiny human female with empty hands. Or are you afraid she might talk you to death?" The laughter returned. Baruch's faceplates darkened with what I suspected was embarrassment, but he nodded curtly and left the bridge. I pulled up the humans file on my personal console while we waited. Lieutenant Kira Stone, 28 standard years old, enlisted at 18, 4 tours of combat duty, decorated twice for valor, hand-to-hand combat instructor, certified in 17 different martial disciplines, most of which had names I could not pronounce. The list went on, and on, and on. "Commander," I said, trying to keep my voice neutral, "I really think we should review her service record before proceeding." "Vokhtar, you worry too much. Watch the screen. Watch how quickly she surrenders when faced with real soldiers." The security feed showed Baruch and his team entering the docking bay. 6 Kalvari, each standing over 2 meters tall, each carrying plasma rifles and shock batons, each outweighing the human by at least 40 kilograms. They fanned out in standard intimidation formation, weapons ready but not quite aimed. Kira Stone did not move, did not flinch, just stood there with her hands at her sides, that same slight smile on her face. "Lieutenant Stone," Baruch said, his translator converting his words to Terran standard, "you will come with us. Resist, and we will use force." "Oh, I am coming with you," she replied cheerfully. "But quick question, do you guys have a medical bay nearby? Like, a really good one?" One of the guards made a chittering sound that translates roughly to a nervous laugh. Baruch silenced him with a glare. "You threaten us?" Baruch's crest flared, a sign of aggression. "You stand alone and unarmed, and you threaten us?" "Me? Threaten?" Kira raised her empty hands, palms out, in what humans call a placating gesture. "I am just being practical. See, your commander insulted my empty hands, mocked them, actually. And the thing about empty hands is this." She paused, and her smile grew wider. "They are empty because they do not need to hold weapons. They are the weapons." "Enough talk," Threx barked through the intercom. "Baruch, bring her, now!" 2 guards moved forward to flank her. The one on her right reached out to grab her shoulder. What happened next took exactly 2.3 seconds. I know because I reviewed the footage 17 times afterward, and it still did not quite make sense. The guard's hand never reached her shoulder. Kira pivoted, impossibly fast, and her supposedly weak little human hand shot forward in a strike that connected with the guard's throat. There was a sound, a wet cracking sound that made my stomach sacs clench. The guard dropped his rifle and clutched at his neck, gasping. Before his knees hit the deck, Kira had already moved. The second guard swung his shock baton in a wide arc that should have caught her across the head. Should have. She ducked under it, stepped inside his reach, and drove her elbow into his thorax with such force that his chest plate, military-grade armor, cracked audibly. He went down hard. The remaining 4 guards opened fire. Plasma bolts lit up the docking bay in brilliant blue flashes. Except Kira was no longer where she had been standing. She moved like water, like smoke, like nothing I had ever seen before. 1 second she was there, the next she was somewhere else entirely, and another guard was screaming as her foot connected with his knee joint in a way that knees absolutely should not bend. Threx was no longer laughing. "What is she?" someone whispered on the bridge. Baruch was roaring orders, trying to coordinate his team, but Kira gave him no time. She grabbed the plasma rifle from the fallen guard, not to fire it, that would have been too simple, but to use as a club. The reinforced stock caught another guard across his faceplate, and I heard teeth breaking. 2 guards left standing now, plus Baruch. "Fall back!" Baruch shouted, displaying the first sign of intelligence anyone had shown in this entire disaster. "Fall back and seal the bay." Too late. Kira was already moving toward him. One of the remaining guards tried to tackle her, using his superior mass to his advantage. Standard Kalvari combat doctrine against smaller opponents. Pin them. Use your weight. Crush them. She rolled with the tackle, using his momentum against him, and somehow ended up on top. Her fist came down once, twice, 3 times in rapid succession. Each impact made a sound like meat hitting stone. The guard stopped moving. The last standing guard, to his credit, did not run. He charged with his shock baton held high, battle cry tearing from his throat. Kira sidestepped, grabbed his arm as he passed, and pulled while sweeping his legs. Basic technique. Elementary, really, but executed with such precision and force that the guard flipped completely over and landed flat on his back, with an impact that knocked the air from his lungs. She knelt beside him, her knee on his chest, and looked directly at the camera again. "So," she said, barely breathing hard. "About those terms." Baruch was crawling toward the exit, 3 of his limbs clearly broken. Kira walked over to him casually, crouched down, and patted his shoulder almost gently. "You will live," she assured him. "Probably, but you should really get to that medical bay I mentioned. Tell your commander that if he wants to continue this conversation, he should come down here himself. Otherwise, I am just going to keep working my way through your crew until I reach the bridge. Your choice." She stood, walked back to the center of the bay, and sat down cross-legged on the deck. Waiting. Patient. Those empty hands resting calmly on her knees. The bridge was absolutely silent. Threx stared at the screen, his 4 arms hanging limply at his sides, his eye stalks drooping in what I recognized as shock. 6 trained warriors. 6. Down in less than 30 seconds. And she had used nothing but her bare hands, her empty hands. "Perhaps," I said quietly, "we should have exercised caution." Threx turned to look at me, and for the first time since I had known him, I saw something other than arrogance in his expression. I saw fear. "What is she?" He repeated the question that had been whispered earlier. I pulled up more of her file, scrolling through combat reports, training certifications, psychological evaluations. "She is human, Commander, just human. And humans, as I tried to warn you, do not need weapons to be dangerous. Their entire species evolved as persistence hunters. They chased prey for days until it collapsed from exhaustion. They climbed to the top of their food chain using nothing but endurance, intelligence, and the ability to throw rocks really, really accurately. And somewhere along the way, they learned to turn their own bodies into weapons." "She is waiting for me," Threx said, his voice barely above a whisper. "She expects me to go down there." "Yes, sir, she does. What happens if I do not?" I brought up a schematic of the ship. "Then she will come up here. And based on what we just witnessed, I do not believe our security forces can stop her. She will break through every deck, every bulkhead, every guard, until she reaches this bridge. Those empty hands will keep working until she gets what she wants." "Which is?" "I imagine she wants to discuss the terms of our surrender, sir." Threx made a sound I had never heard before. It might have been a laugh. It might have been a sob. Hard to tell with Kalvari physiology. "Our surrender," he repeated. "She wants us to surrender to her. One human, one female, one weaponless diplomat." She is not exactly weaponless anymore, sir. She is holding a plasma rifle. She has not fired it. No, I agreed. She has not, which should terrify you more than if she had. Threx slumped into his command chair, and I genuinely felt sorry for him in that moment. He had expected easy prey and found a predator instead. He had mocked empty hands and learned they could break ribs, shatter bones, and destroy his entire worldview in under half a minute. The intercom crackled. Kira's voice came through, still calm, still patient. I am still waiting, Commander Threx. Clock is ticking. Every minute you waste is another minute my fleet gets closer to this position. And trust me, if I have to signal them that negotiations failed, well, she paused. Let's just say I am the diplomatic option. What comes next is much less friendly. She is bluffing, one of the tactical officers stammered. Our long-range sensors show no Terran vessels in this sector. Check again, I suggested, and this time, look for their stealth signatures. He did. His faceplates went pale. Commander, I have 20. Wait, I am reading 37 Terran warships. They just decloaked. They are holding position at the edge of weapons range. Threx closed all 4 of his eyes. When he opened them again, something had changed in his expression. The arrogance was gone. The bravado had evaporated. What remained was a career military officer finally recognizing the reality of his situation. Open a channel to Docking Bay 7, he ordered quietly. The channel opened with a soft chime. Lieutenant Stone, Threx said, and his voice held none of its earlier mockery. It appears I may have underestimated your position and your capabilities. I believe we should discuss these terms you mentioned. On screen, Kira stood up, dusted off her jumpsuit, and smiled that same slight smile. Now we are getting somewhere. I will come to you, shall I? Save you the trip. I promise to behave. Well, she glanced at the 6 groaning Kalvari warriors scattered around the bay. I promise to behave better than I already have. See you in a few minutes, Commander. Oh, and Threx? Yes? Next time someone boards your ship with empty hands, remember this moment. Remember that humans spent millions of years learning to kill without tools. We are very, very good at it. The weapons we carry are not because we need them. They are because we choose to be merciful. The channel closed. I looked at Threx, who looked at me, and we both shared the same thought. We had learned something today. Something important. Something that would probably save Kalvari lives in future encounters. Never mock the empty hands of a human. Those hands conquered a planet, built civilizations, reached for the stars. And when necessary, those hands could break ribs, shatter bones, and humble an entire warship full of warriors who thought highs and weapons were all that mattered in combat. Lieutenant Kira Stone was on her way to the bridge, and we were about to learn exactly what terms the Terran Defense Force considered acceptable when one of their ships was attacked without provocation. Something told me we were not going to like them very much, but we were absolutely going to agree to them, because the alternative was facing more humans with empty hands. And after today, I understood exactly why that was a terrifying prospect. Human hands. Empty. Dangerous. Deadly. Who would have thought the absence of weapons could be so much more frightening than their presence? The Kalvari would remember this lesson. I would make absolutely certain of that. The elevator ride to the bridge took 90 seconds. I know because I counted each one, watching the security feed as Lieutenant Kira Stone stood alone in the lift. examining her knuckles with the detached interest of someone checking their nails after a manicure. Except her knuckles were slightly bruised and flecked with purple Kalvari blood. She did not look nervous, did not pace, did not check weapons she did not have. She just stood there, breathing normally, as if she had not just dismantled 6 trained warriors with nothing but biomechanics and attitude. Threx had assembled what remained of his command staff on the bridge. Everyone stood at attention, trying desperately to look professional, despite the fact that we all knew we had just been thoroughly humiliated by a single opponent who weighed less than our standard-issue ammunition crates. "Security teams on standby?" Threx asked, his voice carefully controlled. "Yes, Commander," the tactical officer replied. 10 guards positioned outside the bridge entrance, another 15 in the adjacent corridors. "Good. If she tries anything at all, they are authorized to use lethal force." I cleared my throat. "Commander, with respect, we just watched her defeat 6 guards in under 30 seconds. What makes you think 25 will fare better?" "Because this time they will shoot first and ask questions later. And risk starting a war with 37 Terran warships currently holding us at gunpoint." I gestured to the tactical display where those ships formed a very deliberate, very threatening pattern around our position. "That seems unwise." Threx glared at me, but said nothing. He knew I was right. We all knew it. This entire situation had spiraled so far beyond his control that our only real option was to listen to whatever the human wanted and hope we survived the conversation. The elevator chimed. The doors slid open. Lieutenant Stone stepped onto the bridge like she owned it. No hesitation, no fear. She walked past 2 guards who had their rifles trained on her center mass, ignored them completely, and stopped about 3 meters from Threx's command chair. Up close, she looked even smaller, more fragile. Her jumpsuit had a small tear on the shoulder, probably from the tackle attempt. A thin line of sweat ran down her temple. She was mortal, fallible, just flesh and bone and determination. And somehow, that made her more terrifying, not less. "Commander Threx," she said, nodding respectfully. "Thank you for agreeing to meet. I apologize for the mess in your docking bay. Your security chief did give me the option to surrender peacefully. But where's the fun in that?" Was she joking? I genuinely could not tell. Human humor was notoriously difficult to parse, especially in situations involving violence and potential death. Threx descended from his command chair, all 4 arms spread in what was meant to be a conciliatory gesture. "Lieutenant Stone, I believe we began this encounter on the wrong foot. Perhaps we can start over?" "Sure. Hi, I am Kira. You are the guy who mocked my empty hands and called me a scared little diplomat. How's that working out for you?" Several bridge officers made choking sounds. Nobody spoke to the commander like that. Nobody. Threx's crest flared slightly, an involuntary anger response, but he controlled it admirably. "I may have been premature in my assessment of the situation." "You think?" Kira walked over to the main viewport, gazing out at the debris field where our 2 fleets had been exchanging fire less than an hour ago. "Here's what happened today. Just so we are all on the same page, your patrol intercepted our science vessel, the one doing geological surveys in neutral space. Totally legal, totally permitted. You demanded they surrender their data cores. They refused because that data represents 2 years of research and falls under Terran intellectual property protections. You fired on them. You disabled their engines. You prepared to board and take by force what you could not take by law." "That is your version of events," Threx said stiffly. "That is the version recorded by 17 different sensor platforms, including 2 neutral observer stations and a Valorian merchant ship that happened to be passing through. Kira turned to face him. Want to keep arguing facts, or should we move on to consequences? The bridge had gone completely silent. Even the normal background hum of systems seemed muted. What consequences did you have in mind? Threx asked carefully. Kira smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Well, initially, the Terran Defense Force wanted to make an example of you. Full military response. Board your ship, arrest your crew, impound your vessel, hold very public trials for piracy and attempted theft. Really splash it across the galactic news feeds. Show everyone what happens when you mess with human operations. But, I prompted, sensing the turn. But I suggested an alternative. She walked slowly around the bridge, examining consoles, looking at displays, completely at ease, despite being surrounded by armed guards and hostile aliens. See, I think this was a misunderstanding. A stupid, arrogant, nearly catastrophic misunderstanding, but still, I think Commander Threx here did not actually comprehend what he was dealing with. He saw a small ship with minimal weapons and assumed easy prey. Classic predator mistake. Judge the target by appearance rather than capability. I admitted my error, Threx said through clenched jaw muscles. You did, after I put 6 of your people in medical bay, which brings me to my terms. Kira stopped walking and faced the commander directly. First, you will issue a formal apology to the captain of the science vessel, public, on record, admitting wrongdoing and accepting full responsibility. Threx's eye stalks twitched, but he nodded. Second, you will personally pay for repairs to their ship, out of your own command discretionary fund, not the Kalvari military budget. You broke it. You bought it. Another nod, more reluctant this time. Third, and this is the important one, you will submit a report to Kalvari High Command explaining exactly what happened here today. No embellishment, no excuses, just facts. You attacked a science vessel. You threatened unarmed researchers. You got your ass handed to you by one human female with empty hands. And you learned a valuable lesson about underestimating species based on superficial characteristics. That report will destroy my career, Threx said quietly. Yes, probably, but here's the thing. Kira's voice softened slightly. The alternative is, we arrest you, try you, convict you, and you spend the next 20 years in a Terran detention facility while your crew becomes political prisoners, and this incident sparks a diplomatic crisis that nobody wants. Your career ends either way. This way, at least you get to end it with some dignity intact. You made a mistake. You owned it. You learned from it. That counts for something in human culture. Maybe it will count for something in yours too. I found myself impressed despite everything. She was offering him a way out. Harsh, humbling, career-ending, but still better than the alternative. And she was framing it as mercy, which it absolutely was, compared to what could have happened. Threx stood silent for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice carried the weight of defeat. I accept your terms, Lieutenant Stone, all of them. Smart choice. I will transmit the formal documentation to your console, sign it, file it, and we can all go home. She paused. Well, your security team needs medical attention first, but after that, home. One of the bridge officers, a young female named Siktara, stepped forward hesitantly. Lieutenant, may I ask a question? Kira turned. Sure. How did you do it? The fight in the docking bay. We have reviewed the footage. Our instructors have reviewed the footage. Nobody understands how you moved that fast, hit that hard, Reacted that quickly. What kind of enhancement augmentation do you have? Neural accelerators? Muscle fiber reinforcement? Skeletal density modifiers? None of the above. Kira held up her hands again, those infamous empty hands. This is standard human biology. No modifications, no enhancements, just training, practice, and genetics. Humans evolved to be endurance hunters and tool users. Our hands are incredibly versatile. Our reaction times are fast because they had to be. And we have this neat trick where we can go into a state we call flow or combat mode. Time does not actually slow down, but our perception shifts. We process information faster, react without thinking, let instinct take over. All humans can do this? Siktara asked, eyes wide. With enough training? Yes, most do not bother because, honestly, we prefer using technology and weapons like civilized beings. But the capability is there, built into our DNA. We are persistence predators who learned to walk upright and use tools. But we never forgot how to be dangerous with just our bodies. I pulled up comparative biological data on my console while she talked. Human muscle density, bone structure, nervous system response times. On paper, they were not particularly impressive. Dozens of species outmatched them in raw strength, speed, or durability. But humans had versatility, adaptability, and that terrifying ability to push beyond normal physical limits when survival demanded it. "Your people frighten me, Lieutenant," Threx admitted, and there was no shame in his voice now, just honest recognition. Not because you are stronger or faster, but because you are unpredictable. We thought we understood the variables: ship size, weapon count, crew complement. But we failed to account for the human variable: individual capability, personal determination, the willingness to fight, even when victory seems impossible. Kira's expression softened. "Commander, every species in this galaxy has something that makes them special. Kalvari have incredible coordination and tactical planning. Valorians have telepathic communication. The Morgath have natural armor that could stop a tank round. Humans, we have stubbornness. We have the ability to look at impossible odds and say, not today. We evolved on a death world that tried very hard to kill us for millions of years, and we survived by being too stubborn to die and too creative to quit. Those empty hands you mocked? They built everything from stone tools to starships. They created art and music and literature. And yes, when necessary, they became weapons." She walked back toward the elevator. "Your people and mine do not have to be enemies, Commander. This was a mistake. An expensive, painful, humbling mistake. But still, just a mistake. Learn from it. Teach others. Next time you encounter a human ship, remember today. Remember that appearances deceive. Remember that small does not mean weak, and unarmed does not mean helpless." "I will remember, Lieutenant Stone. I promise you that." Kira stepped into the elevator, then paused and looked back. "Oh, and Commander? Your security chief, Baruch? He is going to be fine. Broken bones, bruised pride, but he will live. Tell him I said he did everything right tactically. His problem was not skill or courage. His problem was fighting an opponent outside his frame of reference. That is not a failure. That is a learning opportunity." The doors began to close. "Lieutenant," I called out, unable to help myself. "Why did you really come alone? You had 37 warships. You could have brought a full assault team. Why risk yourself?" She smiled one last time. Because diplomacy is not about overwhelming force. It is about making a point. I needed Commander Threx to understand that humans are dangerous not because of our technology or our numbers, but because of who we are fundamentally. One human, properly trained and motivated, can change the outcome of an encounter. Imagine what 1,000,000 could do, or 1,000,000,000. That is the point, Vokhtar. That is the message I came here to deliver. The elevator doors closed. She was gone. The bridge remained silent for several heartbeats. Then Threx slowly lowered himself back into his command chair, looking suddenly very old and very tired. "Begin the documentation process," he ordered. "Full report as specified. No omissions, no alterations. And someone get me a direct line to High Command. They need to hear about this before the official filing." "Sir," Siktara ventured, "what will you tell them?" Threx looked at the viewport, at the Terran ship still holding position, at the science vessel his foolish aggression had nearly destroyed. "The truth. I will tell them we encountered humanity today. Real humanity. Not the sanitized diplomatic version we see at treaty negotiations. And I will tell them we are fortunate to have survived the experience with nothing worse than wounded pride and broken bones." I began compiling the incident report, pulling data from every sensor, every recording, every possible source. The footage of that fight in the docking bay would become required viewing at the Kalvari Military Academy within a month, I was certain. Future officers would study it, analyze it, debate it, and they would remember the lesson. Never underestimate an opponent. Never judge capability by appearance. And never, ever mock the empty hands of a human. Because those hands carried the legacy of a species that climbed from the primordial ooze to the stars through nothing but determination, innovation, and the refusal to accept defeat. They had no natural weapons, no claws or fangs or venom. So they made their own. And when they had no tools, they used what nature gave them. 2 hands, 10 fingers, unlimited potential for violence when peace failed. Lieutenant Kira Stone's shuttle departed an hour later. The Terran fleet maintained position until the paperwork cleared, then jumped away as silently as they had arrived. Our science team spent weeks analyzing their stealth technology and came away with nothing useful. Humans, it seemed, were good at keeping secrets. The wounded security personnel recovered, though Barak walked with a slight limp afterward. He never blamed Stone for the injuries. In fact, he requested copies of human combat training manuals and began incorporating their techniques into our own programs. Threx submitted his report as promised. High Command reviewed it, verified it with neutral observers, and quietly reassigned him to a training position where his experience could benefit the next generation of commanders. His career did not end in disgrace, exactly, more like cautionary tale. And me? I became the Kalvari military's leading expert on human behavior and combat capabilities. Not because I wanted the job, but because someone needed to make sure we never forgot what happened that day. Someone needed to remember the lieutenant who boarded a warship alone and unarmed and walked away, victorious. Someone needed to keep telling the story of empty hands that broke ribs, shattered assumptions, and changed everything we thought we knew about humanity. So I tell it, over and over, to anyone who will listen. Because the galaxy is full of species stronger than humans, faster than humans, more naturally armed and armored than humans, but none of them are more dangerous. And now we know why.